Welcome to the NAV Viking tutorials. I'm Johannes Gudmundsson, founder of Anecta, a Microsoft Dynamics NAV Gold certified partner. Hello and welcome to the Coffee Mug tutorials. We're going to keep going on approvals. Today we are going to deep dive into the approval structure. But a couple of things first. I got a question on one of the videos how I actually log in as multiple users on one machine. You can see here I'm logged in as demo, and if I go in here I'm logged in as Paul. So it's fairly simple. You just have to go in here in the start menu, right click on the icon and say run as a different user, and then you can actually run multiple instances in different users on the same machine. So hopefully that explains it. Now, what we're going to get into today is actually changing a workflow. So if I go into the workflows, like we did before, and remember it's workflows with an S. Right now I have set up a standard workflow for sales documents called Sales Order Approval Workflow right here. If I go into that, and this is the standard workflow where we are basically sending for approval, and if it's approved, then it removes and releases. If it's rejected, it goes back to open, etc. And there are notifications going back and forth. So this is the structure that's actually being delineated. And I actually have a real problem. It's a problem we had with the old approval system I was trying to solve, and I couldn't solve it the way it was before. Now whether we have this structure, I want to try to solve this using that. So it's a real life problem. The problem was, for a particular customer, we don't want an approval process. We basically want the user to be able to release it. So how do we do that? I actually, here on the first line, you can see an approval of sales document is requested on condition. We can actually change this, and I've done that already just to show you how this could be done. So if I go in here, I basically have a filter. So I can do any filter I like. And what I've done here is I set up, I don't want this to affect customer number 10,000. So not 10,000. That means that this approval workflow will not work for 10,000. All right. So basically, if I send something for an approval, if it's not 10,000, it will go through here. If it is 10,000, it will not. So I'm going to enable this. And yep, this looks right. So I'll just close that out. So now I have this approval workflow on condition. So what about the condition where it is? And I have here this test one. So I created another workflow. It's called test. It's pretty much a copy of the other one. It's in the sales doc category. And here I actually say, well, if if the customer number is 1,000, then response. So in here, ideally, we would like to have the document just release. And I have not been able to do that. So in case of this being the case, that you actually go through customer 1,000 or 10,000 for the approval, what I'm going to do is just show a message. And basically I'm going to say here, this customer does not need approval, like that. So that people will just know that they can just release it, right? So I just hit OK. And I'm going to remove this line, like so, and enable this. Now let's see what happens. But as you can see, I'm already modifying the structure. So the point of the video is you can modify it and you can do a lot of different things. What could happen here is that it actually does not allow me to release it, but or maybe it will. So let's see. Now I have enabled two sales order approval workflows. One called test, which is specifically for 1000, and one the sales order approval workflow, which is standard, which is not for 10,000. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out. I go in as Paul. I create a new one. Obviously, I'm going to do this for 10,000 because that's kind of more interesting. We can also do it for not 10,000. Let's go ahead and do this. We sell the Paris guest tier. I was just in Paris. Love it there. So tiers are probably really nice that come from Paris. All right, so now we send approval request. It says this customer does not need approval. Works. Great. All right, so what then? Can I release it? Aha, cannot. So I can't even have a message box that says it. So let's go ahead and change this again. So it's a little bit like this with the approvals. So if I just go into this one and I say, well, I just take it away. Not going to do that. All right, so I have nothing happening for 10,000. What can I do then? Well, if I go into the Canon group again, actually this one is released. Let's just create a new one again. So one of the things that happens is it creates an approval workflow process, and you kind of have to cancel it if you want to work with the same order again. But anyways, so we go ahead and do the Paris guest tiers. What happens now if I send for approval? Nothing. Okay. No approval workflow for this record is enabled. All right. So what do we do if we hit release? Boom, releases. So this is a solution. So if you can teach your people that if it comes up with no workflow, you can just release. However, if I do it for somebody else, so we pick another customer. Oh my God, we're going to sell to somebody else in Canon group. What's coming over me? But I still get to sell the Paris guest here. So creatures of habit. So we keep going from the yellow, 5. So what we would expect in this case is that it would go through a standard approval process. And it does. Now it's pending approval and it's good. So here you've seen how we can actually change the approvals, create multiple different approvals. I could have had another approval process for 10,000, but if there is an approval process, I think it has to go into pending approval and wait for another step. So I couldn't find a way around that. If you do, maybe you could put a comment. This also opens up for programming. You could program steps, or your developer can create steps that you can then select into the approval process. So it's flexible to a certain extent and can be extremely flexible if you open up the development, which is always the case with NAV. Well, anyways, this was a long one. I hope you got something out of it. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe and hit like if you like this video. Thanks.